When it comes to Australian wildlife, there's going to be very few species that are as iconic yet as controversial as this fella here, the saltwater crocodile. Now, in recent months, there's been a proposal, a plan put forth by the Queensland government to remove an undisclosed number of crocodiles over 2.4 metres in length in North Queensland. Now, this is essentially a cull. It's a nice way of saying it, but it's a cull. So in this video, we actually head up to Cairns, the epicenter of this conversation, to talk about 5 reasons why crocodile culling doesn't really work, why it's not a great idea. Now, since we did go and film this video, it looks like the Queensland government's actually backed off a little bit, thanks to a very vocal group of crocodile conservationists, people putting their hands up for crocodiles. But that doesn't make this video any less relevant. You see, it is only a matter of time. Next month, next week, next year, the next time there is a negative interaction between a human and a crocodile, that this conversation will come up all over again. So stick around, guys. In this video, we head up to the home of the saltwater crocodile and share with you 5 reasons why culling is not the answer. Stick around. The first major issue with crocodile culling is that there's very little information and plenty of information to the counter that culling actually improves safety. You see, here in Australia, we've got the healthiest crocodile populations in the world currently, and we average about 1 death from crocodiles every single year in Australia. Now, I don't want to minimise 1 death. This is one person not going home to their family. It's a serious issue. Our goal is to make it 0. But to put it in perspective, 20 Australians every year are killed in horse-related incidences. Now, if we go across the world and we look at countries where a lot of people are killed by crocodiles, as a general rule of thumb, people are killed by crocodiles more often than not in areas with fairly low numbers of crocodiles. Basically, nobody gets attacked in rivers where you can see crocodiles lining up at the other bank. It's where you think it's safe to swim, you hop in, and the risk becomes acceptable. So, low numbers of crocodiles doesn't necessarily mean safety. There's countries with much lower numbers of crocodiles, much more human attacks. Now, the most common rebuttal by people who are for crocodile culling is, yeah, but we used to swim when we were kids and it was much safer. And look, in certain limited populations or places that may be true. But if we look at the heyday of crocodile culling in Australia, the 1930s to the 1970s, in that period we had 23 fatalities in Australia. That's about 0.5 fatalities a year. Now, yes, we've doubled that to 1 fatality a year, so we've had a 100% increase. That being said, the population of North Queensland and the amount of tourism in North Queensland is significantly greater than a 100% increase. So statistically, per person, crocodile attacks are actually more unusual now than they were back in the day where everybody was hopping in and a few people were disappearing and you just didn't really hear about it. So yeah, there's plenty of evidence that crocodile culling doesn't reduce safety, very limited evidence to back up the idea that reducing the numbers improves safety. If anything, it increases complacency, and complacency leads to crocodile attacks. Issue number 2 is that culling is really a band-aid solution, and it has the potential to actually increase the total number of crocodiles in a population. Now, there's fairly limited studies on this, but there is some information from the Northern Territory that basically shows that today, in an intact, flourishing crocodile ecosystem up there, that about 30% of the crocodiles that do successfully hatch make it to that 3-year-old mark, and a lot more don't go past that. However, in the years just after culling stopped in the Northern Territory, this survival of these, 1 to 3-year-olds was as high as 80 to 90%. Now, what's the big change? Back then, when culling stopped, there was no large crocodiles, and the biggest predator of that, small crocodiles. After the hatchling stage, the 1 to 3 to 4 to 5-year-old, their biggest predator is other crocodiles. So when we take out the big crocs, we have lots more smaller crocs surviving, who eventually become big crocs. So the only way we have any benefit is if this culling happens permanently until the end of time. And as we said in number 1, the benefits from this are not as much as people sort of think. Issue number 3 is that crocodiles are, of course, a crucial part of the ecosystem, the food chain here in North Queensland, as well as the Northern Territory, West Australia, wherever they're found. In fact, the role of large predators in ecosystems is very well known. A fantastic example is the wolves in Yellowstone National Park in the United States. Now, we know that predators maintain populations of their prey by consuming them, but the threat of predators itself, just them being there, actually, as demonstrated in Yellowstone, has the capacity to alter animals' behavior. What they found with wolves is, by introducing them, the elk that live spent less time hanging around certain places. Now, while we certainly need more studies to back this up with crocodiles, it's not too far beyond the imagination to say a river with crocodiles is less likely to have animals lingering at the water's edge than a river without crocodiles. So predators do actually have, in some level of capacity, not just to control their prey populations by consuming them, but by modifying their behavior just due to their sheer presence. Now, the other thing is, crocodiles aren't, of course, just predators. They're also prey. Once they're big, not too much is going to bother them other than other crocodiles, but you've got to remember about 1 in 100 eggs hatches and grows up to be an adult. Those eggs are food for all sorts of things, goannas, dingoes, things like this. Once they hatch, they're food for birds of prey and fish and turtles and other crocodiles. So if a female crocodile is laying 40, 50 eggs a year over decades of her reproductive lifespan, not only is she controlling the food system from one end as a predator, she's also putting an awful lot of biomass, an awful lot of food into the ecosystem through all her offspring who simply aren't going to make it. So yeah, crocodiles are unusual in that they're important to the ecosystem on both ends of the food chain. Issue number 4 is the presence of crocodiles. Crocodiles themselves actually contribute to the economy up here in Northern Australia. Now, while we do need a lot more studies here in Queensland, in the Northern Territory, there has been studies into the impacts of crocodiles on the economy. Now, these studies do lump crocodile farming and crocodile tourism together, but they've found that crocodiles bring in about $107 million annually to the Northern Territory economy, which has a fairly small economy compared to the rest of the states already. And a lot of this money is actually going into benefiting regional and remote communities who have limited other ways to make an income. So crocodiles are actually bringing something in. The counter-argument to this is, of course, that by being here, crocodiles are going to hurt the economy because of tourism. Tourists aren't going to come to North Queensland because they can't go swimming in places like this. But there's not much information to back this up. You see, in 2018, a study showed that tourism was worth to just North Queensland, this particular region, $3.1 billion and employed 1 in 5 people. Hardly a struggling economy. Another study done into the health of the tourism industry here in North Queensland highlighted 18 potential threats, things that the tourism industry needs to work on in order to continue to grow and remain healthy for the long-term future. Now, interestingly, not a single one of those 18 threats was crocodiles, the presence of crocodiles, and the first threat was actually coral bleaching. The idea around the world that people have that the Great Barrier Reef is dying, there's no point in visiting because of coral bleaching. So yeah, we can say we need to get rid of crocodiles because they're hurting the tourists, but until we start acting on some of the things causing coral bleaching, play our stage and climate change and things like this, that's a far bigger threat to tourism today, according to the science, than the presence of crocodiles is, especially when we realize that crocodiles actually bring tourists here. People come to this area to see crocodiles. And lastly, of course, we have number 5, and that's the fact that we have to acknowledge that crocodiles are culturally important to Australians. Now, they're culturally important to all Australians through, just the modern Australian culture, Crocodile Dundee, Steve Irwin, Crocodile Hunter, things like this. But far more importantly and more significantly, many Indigenous Australians, the first Australians, many of these people have a connection to crocodiles dating back 60,000 plus years. In fact, there's actually standing legislation that says that any crocodile over 4 meters long is considered iconic. And the way we manage them, what we do with them, when we remove them, where they go, things like this, should be done in conjunction with traditional owners. Now, in this particular case, the push to remove all crocodiles over 2.4 meters has apparently happened without the involvement of traditional owners. So this decision not only impacts the ecosystem, tourism, things like this, it flies in the face of, reconciliation, us working and embracing, traditional knowledge and trying to acknowledge the very, very long cultural significance that this ecosystem has to the traditional custodians of this land. So yeah, crocodiles are culturally significant, not just to us as new Australians, European immigrants into Australia, but dating back tens of thousands of years to Australia's first people. So what's the takeaway with all this? Well, I don't want to sugarcoat it. Crocodiles are potentially dangerous animals. They have the capacity to kill people, and they prey on animals that include things the size of human beings. So if we don't follow the warning signs, if we don't behave responsibly in crocodile ecosystems, we could become one of those fatalities. But the fact that Australia has the healthiest crocodile populations on Earth and some of the lowest fatality rates and attack rates from crocodiles shows that we are capable of living alongside crocodiles successfully. All this being said, ironically, I'm not against the culling or the management of any animal if the science is there to show it up. But in this case, it basically shows that all the goals that the government has set out to achieve by culling crocodiles aren't achieved with crocodile culling the way that they're saying is going to happen. It just doesn't work that way. What this is really about is improving the perceived danger, making you feel safer even if you're not, and that wins votes and things like this. The best way to reduce these, to live alongside crocodiles, is improving human education, teaching people where it's safe to swim, how to behave, investing into creating safe swimming areas, fenced off places like we have in Berry Springs in the Northern Territory. There is ways to do it. Now, in our next video, we're going to actually go into 5 things you can do to help crocodiles. So if you tune into that next week, we'll talk about some of the things that you can do to maybe prevent this happening. And if it does happen, things that we can do to successfully live alongside these guys in the future. Because crocodiles have been here since the time of the dinosaurs. We're new arrivals here, but their existence is no reason we can't enjoy it. We can live in this ecosystem together. They enhance it rather than detract from it. And they're part of what makes Australia what it is. They're amazing animals. Now, I hope you've enjoyed the video. I know it's a little bit different to what we do normally, but it's a really important topic that I'm really passionate about and want you guys to get involved with. If you could do us a favor and share this video with your friends, we need as many people to care about this issue as possible if we are going to make a difference. So yeah, share this video, like, subscribe, all that sort of stuff. Check on back next week. Between now and then, be nice to wildlife, guys. Enjoy our country for what it is, animals and all. Be nice to animals. Have a good one. Take care.